Hey guys, welcome back to the TTA Performance YouTube channel. And I wanted to make a short video and kind of document something. We picked up an 81 301. This is a non-turbo engine from a Trans Am or Firebird. I've never had an 81 non-turbo motor that was actually very complete. In fact, there's a lot of one-year only items on a non-turbo 301 and 81 that I want to document and kind of show you guys. I'm pretty excited to have these pieces, even though they're probably not really worth anything. So I'm going to turn the camera around here and let's take a look at this thing. Okay, so here's this 81 non-turbo 301. This is a 4-barrel unit or engine. So it did not come with a carburetor. This being an 81, this would have what we call the 3C computer command control computerized quadrijet on it, similar to the 81 turbo cars that were sold here in the States. But he kept the carburetor. Odds are it might not have been the original one for it. This motor was removed, obviously, commonly to put a larger Pontiac engine in the car. It doesn't look to be very high miles because it's pretty clean yet. So a couple of things that that we can look at here and kind of document. So non-turbo, their thermal vacuum switch. They have a thermal vacuum switch in the thermostat housing. Now I'm not sure what it would actually hook to because turbo cars don't have that. What we do have, and I'll move some of these hoses if I can. We actually got the charcoal canister with it. So one of the things here is this is the coolant temps sender for the computer. This is not for the gauge in the dashboard. That is for the computer. It's in the same spot on a turbo. This would be the one for the gauge. That's in the driver's side cylinder head. Let's see, looking it over, I noticed we got the alternator bracket. It must have had the bigger alternator, possibly. Actually, this bracket's different. I've never seen this style bracket for the back of the alternator. The turbo car, oh, maybe it is that one. Maybe it is that one. Yeah, it could be that one. For some reason, it looks odd to me. Some people ask what this little button here. The turbo car has this also, but it's mounted, next to the throttle linkage. This is a wide open throttle switch. This cuts off the AC compressor at wide open throttle to give you a little more power, less drag on the engine. Now, in order to make your AC work, if this is missing or bad, the wires that plug into this, they have to be jumpered. This switch is always closed when the button is up. When you go wide open, it actually breaks the contact between here. So if this is missing on your car and your AC is not working, go find the connector and loop jumper a wire between it. We got heater hose. So non-turbo gets a short dipstick behind the valve cover, or behind the driver's side valve cover. This is another thing that we have going on. We have a heat riser valve on the driver's side exhaust manifold. Only on the naturally aspirated or non-turbos. This exhaust manifold is 81 only, but it's used on turbo and non-turbo. It actually says 81 cast right there. And the difference is that it has a very small outlet for the gasket. In fact, the gasket, well, this one doesn't really have a gasket because we have the heat riser valve. On a turbo, there's no heat riser. So the pipe connected directly to it with a donut gasket. That donut gasket is not available anymore. I do make a donut gasket for it for the 81 exhaust manifold. And we have their heat shield, which looks identical to the turbo one. Obviously, we don't have turbo valve covers because the oil fill cap is in the center, whereas the turbo would be at the end along with the grommet for the breather tube. So this is the passenger side is where things get a little interesting. So on the passenger side, we have 81 only has this awesome bracket spot welded to the valve cover. And then we have this purge solenoid. The purge solenoid is only found in 81. Both the turbo car and the naturally aspirated cars got it. The turbo car is actually mounted on a pipe going across the front of the engine. Here it's mounted on the valve cover. As you can see, this one is in really good shape. The turbo cars, this thing's always disintegrated. So this is actually a really good one. We might have to try to sell that. I'd never noticed that the vent tube for the float bowl is on the same bracket. Again, I've never had an 81 3C or non-turbo motor so complete. So this is actually really great to document. So yeah, this is the float bowl vent tube. This would go to the carburetor, and then that would go to, obviously it went to the charcoal canister, emissions canister, whatever you want to call it. So this is where things get interesting. The passenger side exhaust manifold on an 81 non-turbo is a 1 year only manifold again. And what makes it a 1 year? Well, first off, we have an oxygen sensor in it for the computer. The other thing is we have the two-headed monster right here. So the pipe crosses over from the driver's side manifold under the oil pan sump to this manifold, and then there's an outlet here to go to the catalytic converter. So many times I see this manifold listed for sale. Everybody says it's a turbo manifold because they see the two outlets. That is incorrect. It is an 81 only, non-turbo manifold. The turbo manifold, 80 and 81 is the same, has the outlet here to have the pipe come up and feed the turbo. How do we know it's an 81? Knock sensor is mounted at the back of the block here. This is an 81 block. This is technically a turbo block because it is an 81. All non-turbo and turbo 301s from 1980 to 81 have a turbo block. Thicker casting, thicker cylinder walls, bigger main cap bolts. It does not have the turbo crankshaft or the turbo pistons. This is an 8-to-1 compression motor. It has the flat top pistons in it, but it's still a turbo block. So this is a great core if we want to turn it into a turbo. Let's see, what else? Usually you can tell the year if you kind of dig in here. It's all, but basically it would say 81. Actually, rather than getting filthy there, we'll go look at an actual 81 turbo engine. And here you can see 81. So there's always a 2-digit number on the back of the block to tell you what year it is. So this is, so like I said, it's an 81 transmission. This is not a turbo 350. The non-turbo engines got the metric 200. It's a weaker version of the turbo 350. It does have a little bit deeper first gear. So it's got a 274 first gear versus the 252 first gear of a turbo 350. But it's not really rated for a whole lot of torque. I think later on they converted it to overdrive, and that's what the 204R, which was stronger then, came from. But you can tell because this has a lockup torque converter. There's a connector for it. The turbo 350 and 81 also had a lockup converter, but the connector was up and down on the pan rail, not in the side. Also, the metric 200 does not have a vacuum modulator on the tail of the transmission like a turbo 350 does. These actually have a throttle valve cable. This cable right here, which is still attached, this cable right here is what sets the line pressure on the transmission for the shift points. So it's not vacuum operated. Other than that, well, let's see. What else can we think of? What else am I noticing? AC brackets are a little bit different. It might have had a different AC compressor on it. This is different from the turbo version. The 4-barrel carburetor, so it has this thick spacer for the EGR. And that's kind of critical because it also helps the linkage clear for the carburetor itself. So we have this thick spacer. This was an electric choke carburetor that would have originally been on it because there's no choke tubes in the heat crossover of the intake. So there's actually a couple different versions of the 4-barrel 301 intake manifold. Earlier ones have choke tubes coming through here to heat the choke mechanically versus the electric choke version, which I believe is 80 and 81 is the electric choke version. They don't have the tubes in the crossover. But I think that kind of covers it. We did get some other parts and pieces we can look at real quick. We have the air pump here with the tube, air pipe tube going across. That's different from a turbo. I noticed this is straight. Turbo's got a really funky bend in it. We have the AC, or the alternator bracket is attached. We got the computer with it, with the knock sensor box. So if you ever wanted to know, usually this mounts in the center console. I wonder if it's any good. I know the prom chip's going to be for an NA non-turbo, but the one with the 2 connectors here, the larger box, this is called the ECM. This is the engine control module. This here is the knock sensor box, or the electronic spark control box. This is for the knock sensor circuit. They're 2 separate boxes, but they do talk to each other. So a lot of times what would happen is we have the distributor here, which is probably the same as the turbo because there's no mechanical weights and springs in it, and there's no vacuum advance on it. So this is, all we have is this 4-pin connector right here for the electronic spark control and for the ECM to control timing. This is the only way to get a Pontiac distributor that is completely locked out. There's no weights and springs or anything in it. These work great for my fuel injection conversions. I use these distributors to control timing. Like I said, this is probably the same as the turbo distributor because there's nothing really different about it. But this is what's talking to this, setting the timing and everything. So what ends up happening, if the spark control box in an 81, if this goes bad and you lose spark, technically you can come over here, unplug this at the engine, or under the hood, and it'll go to a default limp mode, and it should start. If the box is bad, it'll start, but you won't have timing control. It'll just be a fixed base timing, and the ECM can't talk to it and actually control any advancement. So what you end up doing is, where this plugs in, we have a board that looks similar to this that would plug into the connector for it to bypass this box, but still allow the ECM to talk to it to control the timing. You just won't have the knock sensor circuit anymore. So nice little tidbit for you there. Other than that, this is pretty cool that we got this. The only unfortunate part is the oil looks like a milkshake. And I'm worried that it has a blown head gasket. But I did take the spark plugs out of it and did not notice any coolant burning. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there. I highly doubt that it's condensation in the oil, but we'll find out eventually and see what's going on. We're going to get it separated here, get it mounted up on an engine stand, and kind of tuck it away for right now. Figure out what we're going to do with it later, or if somebody needs a 81 turbo block as a core to either rebuild for their turbo car, or I don't know, maybe we'll have fun with it and maybe do some NA stuff. I don't know. We'll have to check it out and see what's going on. But thanks for watching, guys. We're going to end the video there, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks.